the availability of these drugs in our communities is affecting every walk of life, every standard of living. There's probably not somebody that you can't speak to that doesn't have a family or friend who knows somebody that has been impacted by a drug overdose.
Frisco and Scott back for another episode of A Closer Look across the Village Media Network. Just when you thought we were done talking baseball, the American League Manager of the Year Award handed out last night, and not to John Schneider.
No, he placed second, the Blue Jays manager?
Placed second.
Stephen Vogt won Manager of the Year, and I think it's a no-brainer. They were dead in the water, 15 games out of their division in the summer, middle of the summer. And he brought that team back from the dead and ended up winning their division by one. The guy, and they lost their star closer who turned out to be accused of gambling, fixing of throwing pitches. Class A. He's one of the best relievers in the game. He lost him in the summertime.
Right.
And we now know why, because of gambling allegations. Yeah. So you're down him. Their bullpen still was phenomenal. They come back, and like I think the odds of them coming back were 0.3% or something like that, and they won the division. So the guy obviously, it would have been really easy for that team to throw in the towel, and they didn't. But I guess what everyone's mad about today is Rosie DiManno, the Toronto Star columnist.
She is getting just crucified online.
Yeah, and I don't understand.
So how does it work? You were saying each American League market gets two votes, two writers.
And I don't know how they pick which writers every year. I don't know if they draw a name of a hat, but each market in the Major League gets two writers that vote on these awards: the Cy Young, the Manager of the Year. So there's 30 votes.
Okay,
and they get three choices, and they're weighted. Right.
Got it.
So you get to pick your first, second, third choice.
Right.
And she picked.
The Cleveland guy first, then Schneider, then Hinch.
Hinch, I think, the Tigers manager.
Yeah, your guy.
Yeah, who did not deserve Manager of the Year. They kind of blew it at the end. But
did they?
No, but I mean, but she's getting killed, right? As if because she's from Toronto, she has to vote for the Toronto. She made
the reporter for the Sun voted for Schneider first.
Yeah,
Rosie didn't, but if you look online, she's just getting crucified.
I don't buy that at all. I'm going to defend Rosie. I think Rosie's great, and I don't think because she's from Toronto, she has to vote for the Toronto.
That's a crock. No.
That's baloney.
Yeah,
and as if Stephen Vogt didn't deserve Manager of the Year. And she wrote. I mean. She loved those Blue Jays. Her coverage of the Blue Jays in the column she was writing every day, she loved what they did for the city. She loved that team. She was very, I don't want to say heartbroken they lost, but she was very much writing glowing columns about the Jays throughout the playoffs. Her coverage was great. And I don't think because she's from Toronto she has to vote for Schneider for Manager of the Year.
But everybody's an expert.
Everybody's an expert.
As you and I know firsthand.
Everyone's a hater. Everyone's a hater.
Especially when you talk about measles.
Yeah, and it's not like, now, I guess it'd be easier to I know, that's not talking about. No one's voting on measles tonight. We've had enough emails already about that. Yeah. But, it is. I could see if she voted for someone that maybe there's an argument made he didn't deserve it. He clearly deserved that award, and she's going to be unbiased and vote for what she thought. And it's not like they're voting for the President of the United States or the Prime Minister.
Exactly.
They're voting for Manager of the Year. It doesn't change the magical run the Jays had.
It does not.
So I can't wait to read her column on the hate because it'll be great. Maybe we'll read some of it on the air tomorrow or the next
day. Okay, we've covered a lot of stuff in the last few days. Dementia, measles. Tonight we revisit fentanyl.
Fentanyl, yes. When we first relaunched this show back in the summertime, we had OPP Commissioner Thomas Carrick on the show.
Yes, we did.
Because there was a record-setting bust. I think it was 34 kilograms of fentanyl was seized in that bust. Well, just today they announced that they've topped that, and this seems to be a trend. I mean, a lot of cities are announcing this too. I think here in the Sioux, they just broke the record for largest fentanyl bust. Yeah. And I just want to make sure I get this right. Working with Windsor Police, they seized 46 kilograms of fentanyl, which is equals 460,000 potential street doses if you take it down to 0.1 gram.
Did they say what the dollar value?
Yeah, $6.5 million in drugs. Some handguns, a lot of cell phones. The photos, I'm sure Derek's going to just flash them across the screen, just piles and piles of cash that would set us up for life. We'd be ready to retire.
Damn right we would.
But, it's a great opportunity to go back to that conversation with the OPP commissioner. It was a different bus, but talk about the same issues, how prevalent this stuff is, how much easier it is to produce. It's not like you have to get these ingredients from all over the place, or you're actually smuggling in the drugs like the old days from Colombia, for example, right? And just how many different criminals see an opportunity in this, right? Obviously, the money is massive, and that's what's driving is the profit. So let's go back and listen to that conversation with the OPP commissioner, and then we'll come back and chat some more.
All right, let's do it.
Detective Superintendent, you're obviously a veteran of this. It's not something you're new to, but do you actually take a step back or have a moment when you see that amount of fentanyl on the table and think, wow, or is it for you just old hat now?
No, I wouldn't call it old hat, but I think what these investigations demonstrate, that what you're seeing across the province is this is a province-wide public safety issue. From 2016 to 2024, there's been over 51,000 opioid-related deaths in Canada. So this is a significant public safety issue, and it's very alarming.
Is there a certain element of the organized crime world that's doing this, or are there all kinds of different criminal organizations that are getting into trafficking fentanyl?
It's definitely a piece of organized crime, but there are varying groups. Organized crime are sophisticated. They identify vulnerabilities and they exploit them for criminal profits. So where there's areas for these profits to be made, they will engage in these types of drug trafficking behavior.
Commissioner, can you speak to this? I know there's been a lot of talk in the last couple of months about the Trump administration saying that a lot of fentanyl from Canada is going over the border to the United States. Did you see any of that in this investigation? And in general, do you see that in any of your investigations?
Great question. Thank you. And great opportunity to correct the misinformation. In this investigation, we did not see any of the fentanyl making its way across the Canada-U.S. border. There's very little evidence of that being a trend or pattern. Minimal amount of fentanyl has been seized going from Canada to the U.S., which does not eliminate the concern that both countries should have over fentanyl. Fentanyl is currently being produced domestically in Canada. The majority of the fentanyl produced in Canada is being trafficked in Canada. We are seeing some of it go to other countries around the world, but U.S. is not one of them. And the primary driver for that is fentanyl manufactured in Mexico is 4 times cheaper than fentanyl manufactured in Canada. As Detective Superintendent Bradford has indicated, the fentanyl market is all about profit. Everything that organized crime does is about profit. They are a poly-market industry, and they will go where the profit is. So it makes absolutely no sense that Canadian fentanyl would be a preferred source in the U.S.
I appreciate that answer. And also, I guess the average Joe doesn't really understand. When you say it's produced and manufactured in Canada, how is this happening? Like, are your investigators seeing this in major warehouses and small houses? How is this being produced? I'm sure there's a wide array, but how mostly is it being produced here?
There is a wide array of production methods. It is not difficult to produce. It can be made in very small batches in a bathroom in a house, in a kitchen in a house, up to super labs like we've seen in BC. We have not identified any major production facilities in recent investigations here in Ontario, but a number of the investigations that we've recently reported out on and others that we are currently involved in, that's something that we're always seeking to identify. Where is the fentanyl being produced? And that is something that we have to remain very focused on.
Gentlemen, I think a lot of people in the province and in Ontario communities read about a huge drug bust like this, and they think, wait a minute, this doesn't impact me. I don't traffic fentanyl and I don't use fentanyl. But that's not the case, is it? Can you speak to the public safety threat that these criminal organizations pose?
We certainly can. We have seen cases where there's been home invasions over drug wars or debts, and these criminal organizations just happen to bust through the wrong front door and harm and or fatally injure innocent people that have nothing to do with these drug wars and the illicit drug market. It is straining our healthcare system. It is impacting the quality of life in almost every community across this country. We are seeing unprecedented unprecedented rates of property crimes. In some areas, we're seeing, rates of homelessness that have some connection in some cases back to substance abuse. The availability of these drugs in our communities is affecting every walk of life, every standard of living. There's probably not somebody that you can't speak to that doesn't have a family or friend who knows somebody that has been impacted by a drug overdose. So we are all being affected by this. The quality of life in our country is in jeopardy based on the dramatic and devastating impacts of these drugs.
It's a very important your answer there, Commissioner, because you talk to some people. We've done some polling as well, and you ask people what's one of the main answers to helping to solve this wide crisis as you've described. And there are a lot of people who think, well, we need more police action, but can't be the only answer. Like, yes, we need investigations like this. What else is the OPP doing, working with other agencies in Ontario, for example, to help with this crisis that you described so well?
You're absolutely right. It's not something that the police can solve on their own. We, on behalf of a number of police services across this country who partner through StyRock, we developed the opiate strategy that is relied upon nationally, and that strategy entails education. It entails partnering with healthcare providers where we can. It entails enforcement and public awareness. And we continue to be dedicated to those very important partnerships. But we also have to remember that law enforcement is an important piece of this. And we should not take lightly the failed attempts at decriminalizing drugs in British Columbia. That had a dramatic impact on lives. People died as a result of that. The healthcare system was not prepared for the decriminalization of drugs in BC, and it was a stark reminder to law enforcement in BC, and it should be to all Canadians, that law enforcement plays an important part in the drug issues that our communities and country are facing.
It's not every day that you get a guest like the OPP commissioner, but when news like this breaks, it's great to be able to go back in time and revisit a very important conversation. Yeah,
as I rewatched it again this morning, as soon as I saw that headline, I went back and listened to what the OPP commissioner had to say. And some of the things that stick out for sure, right? The idea that you see a big bust like this and you realize that it's still just one small drip in the pan, right? Yeah. Yes, they got 46 kilograms, which is a massive amount of fentanyl off the street. But you think about how many criminal organizations are operating and how much of this stuff. It's not like all of a sudden in the community of Windsor, there's no drugs on the streets now because they got that, right? And what also struck me is, as they both reminded us, is just how widespread this crisis is. It's not affecting one or two communities or some communities. It's impacting every community in Canada, and especially in Ontario. You can go to we have 27 local news sites around the province, and every community is struggling with this, with substance use and with fentanyl in particular, because it's such a powerfully addictive drug and because it's so deadly. You could take the smallest amount, could kill you. So it is a good reminder of all those issues at play here. And I get the sense too, as we said earlier, we're seeing these busts get bigger and bigger, that in another couple months we could revisit this again because they could have another.
Do you get the sense, though, Frisco, that they're almost playing whack-a-mole?
Yeah,
right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
You bang one, another one pops up. Bang one, another one pops up.
For sure. And what fascinates you too is when you look at how this investigation began, it sounds like from the few details, and there's always just a few details that come out in the early days because there's still trials and all that come, but it sounds like they identified two alleged traffickers that they spotted doing this, and that they knew who they were, that they were connected to what they call quote unquote organized crime. And so you say, okay, we're going to start going down this path. But you think any day you could have identified 10 other people in that community who were doing this kind of work, but they honed in on these guys because they spotted them doing something, and it led to this larger investigation. So what I've always found fascinating covering some of these cases over the long term is you know that there would have been search warrants requested we had a judge and asked to tap these guys' phones, to follow their automobiles, to start watching houses, then get search warrants to actually search. I think they searched 7 different properties in this. So they would have watched it. 6 months is a long time, right? You think about a project you do at work that takes 6 months, right? Yeah. But you can imagine how much manpower would have went into watching this group And knowing that they were going to, and then to get final approval from a judge to execute these search warrants and arrest these guys. And I think right now they've said they've arrested 2 people. But when you see the B-roll, and again, I think Derek's going to run some of it too, it's a ton of drugs. It's a ton of stuff. The table's just full of, there's this amount of stuff. But a lot of work goes into this. And then the question will be, then there's a lot of work that goes into the prosecution of these cases, right? And then you just rinse and repeat, and you do it again, and you're trying to figure out how to get the next group. But again, I do think it's commendable. It's big news that they get this amount of drugs off the street in that particular community in Ontario, in the Windsor area. But there's just still so much of it coming in. Yeah. And it's interesting because we did speak to Antonio Nicasso. This was a few years ago. Antonio
was one of our first guests.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Antonio Nicasso is one of the world's leading experts on organized crime, right? And how organized crime blends into regular world things, right? Whether it be, public tendering, construction jobs, like just how mixed together. It's almost impossible to separate legitimate world from the criminal world because it interacts in so many ways. But we did ask Antonio about this issue about, street level fentanyl trafficking when he came on. Let's go ahead and listen to that, and then we'll talk some more about it after.
Perfect.
This is a big question, obviously, but how much are the traditional organized crime groups profiting from the opioid crisis we're seeing right now in Canada?
Let's say that now they are exploring a new frontier and new opportunities. When you're thinking about drug trafficking, the mind goes to Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru for cocaine, or Afghanistan, Mexico for heroin. Imagine this new scenario to try to produce and sell synthetic drugs, synthetic heroin and synthetic cocaine. That means you don't need the coca leaves in Bolivia, Colombia, and Peru, and you don't need the poppies in Mexico or in Afghanistan. So it's a new challenge. Before there was a little bit of problem because they were not able to put together the whole ingredients in the right way. So there were so many casualties around the world, particularly in North America. Now they manage to balance the ingredients, but the ingredients are more toxic compared to the traditional narcotics and cheaper, so they lower the price. And it's a new challenge, a new money opportunity for criminal groups.
And does that mean that more criminal groups are able to jump into this game, so to speak, Antonio, because you don't have the same reach where you have to be bringing in the products from all these different countries? Is it basically an opportunity for any low-level criminal to get into this?
Yes, Michael, in the sense that you need the chemical precursors, and you can purchase from China, and it's the advantage, because you need to buy these chemical precursors and cooking together. So that you don't need to have the contact with the producer of cocaine in Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru, or in Afghanistan. So it's easier because any criminal groups technically can put together heroin and cocaine, synthetic heroin and synthetic cocaine.
It leads right to my next question, Antonio. We've seen this here in Ontario, all across in rural communities, northern communities, First Nations communities. We wrote a large article, one of our big reads recently, about how Toronto-based street gangs are really branching out into northern Ontario, rural Ontario. I mean, we see it at least once a week, Antonio. The police are putting out a press release where they've arrested somebody dealing large amounts of fentanyl, and they're from Toronto. They're from Scarborough. They're from Etobicoke. I mean, are you seeing more and more of this? What's going on here?
Let's say that we have more than 375 street gangs, and at least that data released by the Criminal Intelligence Service of Canada in 2019, and those street gangs continue their involvement in high visibility crimes, and there is an increase, of course, of street gangs or smaller criminal groups in a smaller community. And so it's not like they abandon the larger city, but they move also in a smaller community.
What struck me hearing from Antonio again, and it was great to hear from him, how many low-level, street-level gangs there are out there. It's crazy.
Hundreds, more than 300. So this would have been, he was quoting 2019 numbers. So you think they would have been even larger. And what you're seeing with the movement of fentanyl in Ontario, for example, is it is street gangs, right, that are moving, and they're not just sticking to their communities, they're moving it all over the place. And we've seen that in Northern Ontario, in Indigenous communities in Northern Ontario, in smaller communities in Northern Ontario. These guys are just showing up. They're getting in the car. They're driving up from Southern Ontario, and they're just parking in, whether it be Sault Ste. Marie, Sudbury, Thunder Bay. They might take over a house for a couple days, distribute this stuff all over the community, and then go back and get some more. And that trend is where we are in Sault Ste. Marie has happened as well, where a few years ago we saw the largest ever fentanyl bust. And then just last month, we eclipsed that by a heck of a lot more. I think it was $1.4 million worth of fentanyl was seized by from a 20-year-old is the alleged trafficker. From Toronto.
Right.
And so this trend just continues, right? And so, you know, there's good police work being done, but the challenge we have, and we look at the big picture, is the opioid crisis is just as bad as it's been for many years, right? I mean, we're still seeing, you know, same high rates of overdoses, fatal overdoses. We're still seeing all the ripple effects of the fentanyl crisis, you know, whether it be, you know, like the OPP commissioner mentioned petty crime in those communities with people trying to support their habits. We see people struggling to find treatment, and we're seeing the same amount of, you know, homelessness that we're seeing, that some of it's related to that. So the same kind of problems have existed for a long time, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say, getting to the long way to get to the point, is it's great to see a bust like this, right? And it is a big part. I mean, you're taking a significant amount of severe drugs off the streets, but it's as Thomas said in the interview, there's still a whole lot more to be done as a society in general to deal with this crisis.
Well, and no imminent sign that things are getting better, right? You read about these big drug busts, and again, there's going to be another one that will you know, exceed that one, and then another one that will exceed that one.
That's right. And as both of them said, both Antonio and Thomas said, profit is driving this. Money's driving this, right? I mean, if we got involved in this and got out of it soon enough, we'd make a ton of money. And you know, whether you could put that on your conscience or not would be the challenge, right? Of course, but this is going to be an issue, and I think Antonio mentioned it as well. The idea that these are synthetic drugs being largely produced at home. They're not being produced. You know, you think of the old days of drug importation, like getting it on boats and bringing cocaine in from, you know. Those days are done. This is being produced locally, right? And so that changes the game as well. So these
it's cheaper to do, and it's more accessible.
It's more accessible, which makes it more profitable. It's just bigger money to be made. So I do think we'll be back here in a couple months, maybe even a couple weeks, talking about the next. It went from 34 kilograms a couple months ago to now 46 kilogram bust. Who knows when the next one will be? But it is a good opportunity to go back and look at these interviews and remind ourselves that nothing's really changed.
No, it has not. Okay, that's it for us tonight. Closer Look at villagemedia.ca. We'd love to know your thoughts. Drop us a note. And closerlookpodcast.ca is our website. Feel free to check it out and subscribe to our daily newsletter. Derek Turner, producer of this evening's program, thanks for joining us. For Michael Friscolanti, our editor-in-chief, I'm Scott Sexsmith. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow night at 7, right here on Closer Look.
Frisco and Scott's Wardrobe provided in part by Moores, Sault Ste. Marie.